around this time of year, I know as a kid growing up, right on the brink of Halloween, I remember as a kid, it kind of kicks off that whole holiday season for you, right? You get really excited because ABC Family or Freeform, whatever it's called now, would do their 31 days of Halloween. So you had like your scary movies kind of like stuff going on. And then once that was over, we used to have this season called Thanksgiving. That was really great, really fun. You kind of count down to like football season, right? Like getting really fired up and all this kind of stuff. You get a week off of school for Thanksgiving. It wasn't Christmas part 1, then Christmas part 2 like it is now. But one of the key things that would take place during this time, like during these couple of months, is that we would get to the point where, as a kid, where you have to start getting your list ready, right? Because there was going to be an afternoon or a Saturday that mom was going to walk in and say, hey, here's some clothes that's not very comfortable, but it looks cute with red and white. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the mall, and we got to go take our annual picture with Santa Claus, right? I still remember as a kid, like, we would get all ready, and then we would go to Southland Mall, and then one day I think the guy at Southland Mall had like a cigarette burn or something on his thing, and my mom was like, yeah, we're going to start going to Lakeside, New Orleans, right? But like, I just remember like, we would always have to go take our annual picture with Santa Claus. The background had to be nice, and they had to have like the elves, and if they weren't nice, then I'm not going back there next year, right? Like, but we would go and do these things. But as a kid, you had to be prepared, because the first thing you were going to do is you were going to be in that line, and then Santa was going to be there, and you were going to walk up, and Santa Claus, the guy, was going to look at you, and he was going to say, what do you want for Christmas, little boy? What do you want for Christmas, little girl, right? And you had about 20 seconds to answer everything that you wanted for Christmas, right? So you better have it rehearsed. You better be ready. You better know what you want. Because if you miss your chance as a kid asking that Santa Claus in that place, because we knew he was the one that was flying around, right? He might have been flying, but we don't know. Like, when you walked up, if you did not get everything into that 20-second window, the next kid was about to bump you after they snapped the picture and kick you out, right? So it was like your one chance. Some people would do the letters to Santa Claus. Those things, I don't know if they ever got there, but you know what I mean. But I just remember like that was like, it was like a big pressure moment that you had to know what you wanted, and you had to be ready to say it when you got to the front of the line. I find it's really funny because like as a kid, like that kind of thing would like just like consume me, right? It was like I was doing research, right? Sears catalog, right? 1994. You know what I'm talking about? If you're of my age, then you know. Otherwise, Amazon wish list just accidentally got emailed to mom. I don't know what happened, right? But like this kind of thing would be like the way that you would make sure that you would do your research. You knew exactly what you wanted. You would say all these things, and when you were sitting down, like, great, I got my moment. 20 seconds. Got it all out. Good. Now we're ready for Christmas, right? I say all that because as a kid, we understand just like what it means to ask. Even if it's a high pressure ask, right? We understand what it is to ask. We understand what it is, even if it's a low pressure ask, right? We're at the store, mom, can I have a candy bar? And if you was like, my mom, no, right? Like that was easy. Like it was like, but we know what it means to ask those in charge. We know what it means to ask those people that could do something for us. And the thing about Santa was that he was super, super accessible. Like he had to listen to you, and he was like a nice guy. So he was going to come through in the end or whatever I asked for. Except I never got that drum set that I told him. I don't know what happened. But anyway, I think as we get older, we don't get as good at asking. Like we lose behind, like we fall behind, or we like lose the capability or lose the desire to ask, right? And obviously we don't need the toy, or we don't need the thing, or the drum set, or whatever, right? Like that's not what we need to ask for. But I think a lot of times as we approach our Lord in particular, we can lose this kind of habit of asking. Because if I'm an adult, if I'm independent, if I'm smart, I should be able to do it myself. If I'm strong, I shouldn't have to ask. If I'm bright, I shouldn't have to ask. Like, I should be able to handle it by myself, apart from anybody else. Like, I should be able to achieve everything that I want to achieve. It's on me to do it. I can make it happen. I can bring it to fulfillment. Me, I. And I think a lot of times we lose the desire, or we lose the courage even, to ask. Our gospel today, we follow a professional asker. We follow somebody who is a beggar. Bartimaeus in the Gospels for us can become I honestly believe, I truly do believe, there are some people in the Gospels that are meant to be like a world-shifting kind of figure for us. And I believe Bartimaeus is one of them. Because he teaches us how to ask. Let's look at today's gospel. First thing that we hear in today's gospel is that Jesus is walking out of the city of Jericho and comes across this man named Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus. Now, we might hear that and just be like, okay, the gospel's setting the scene for us in Mark's gospel, like I think chapter 10, right? But like, it's just setting the scene. It's the next thing on Jesus's like, on like the conquest and like the different things Jesus is going around doing, right? The little side quest that he's doing, healing people, preaching, all these kind of things. But what's actually happening is in those couple of words, we have this massive scene that is set for something major. First thing, Jericho. Jericho is a huge city. Jericho at this time was a massive, massive, massive city. And to get in and out of Jericho, there were a few main roads, and those few main roads, right, would go in and out of like the gates of Jericho, right? Jericho was a huge city. It was a really, really big place. So it would make sense that a blind beggar would go somewhere that you would have people that are passing. They're not going to go on a side street. They're not going to go into like this little abandoned corner of town. They want to be right in the middle, and hopefully the compassion of the people that are passing, they're going to see this man, this blind man that's just sitting there begging for money, begging for food, begging for water. Well, when we hear about this, right, he's going to be placed in the main drag of the biggest place. Now, the reason why I think that's so important is because as he's sitting there on the main drag in the biggest place, as he's sitting there and just begging, he's going about his day, he has nothing to distract him by seeing. He's blind. We'll get to that in a sec. But what he does have is he can hear. And as people are passing, you're going to overhear conversations. I don't know if you've ever done this where you just like, for a moment, just kind of shut everything off, your phone, your whatever, right? And like sat in a public place, like in an airport or something, and you just kind of people watch. I love to people watch. People watch is really fun, right? Especially whenever you watch people like, ooh, they fighting, that's fun, right? Like, but anyway, my life's a little bit better right now than him. But anyway, like I just know like there's times that like I'll sit back and people watch, and like even without trying, you'll start to kind of pick up on, oh, this is what's going on there. You can overhear a conversation here and there. You can overhear different things. Bartimaeus every day is sitting out on the main drag in the big city, right? And listening and hearing about what's going on. So he's probably hearing about the politics of the day. He's probably hearing about like people's families. But a lot of people, especially in Jesus' time, as they have this prophet that is doing this preaching, that is taking on the religious establishment, right? That is doing miracle after miracle after miracle, right? After a while, he starts to hear, I'm assuming, he probably starts to hear a little bit about this guy named Jesus of Nazareth. And he wants to meet him. He starts to hear that he's maybe he's raised somebody from the dead, that the mute are speaking, that the deaf are hearing, that there's a little girl that was paralyzed that now can walk, and maybe he can do something about my eyes. The second thing that we hear about in that just a little introduction to who Bartimaeus is, we hear that Bartimaeus is the son of Timaeus. Now, for us, we might not understand, we might not care about that. We might be like, okay, that's interesting. Who's Timaeus? I don't know, right? The word bar, B-A-R, right, the prefix bar in the scriptures actually has a meaning. It means the son of. So when we hear Barnabas, the son of Nabas, right? When we hear Simon, Bar-Jonah, right? Bar-Jonah, son of Jonah. Simon's dad's name was Jonah, right? It's a way to kind of talk about this relationship. So when we hear that Bartimaeus, is the son of Timaeus, right? He's the son of a man named Timaeus. Now, one more thing about this is that Timaeus is a very, very Greek name. Historically, it's an extremely Greek name. Again, what does that matter, Father? You have somebody who is culturally Greek. And Jesus is a Jew. Jesus is Jewish. So when they have this moment where Jesus is going to be passing and Bartimaeus is going to call out, notice what he calls out. Bartimaeus does not just say, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus the miracle worker. He says, Jesus, son of David. He recognizes who Jesus is. He recognizes culturally this, and he also understands that it's taking on the pressure and the burden that Jews and Greeks don't mix. They don't really talk. They have different belief systems. That there's a chasm between these two men that is supposed to exist. But Bartimaeus doesn't care. Because in his cry, you could hear the desperation of sorts. He hears that Jesus is passing, right? He hears the crowd. I'm assuming that Bartimaeus, being a blind man, probably knew when it was a really, really packed road and when it was a really light road. He probably was more sensitive to noise than anybody else because as the road would get louder and more, okay, there's something bigger going on. And all of a sudden he hears a crowd of people making their way, right? He hears a crowd of people coming out because they know Jesus is passing. And Bartimaeus starts to overhear that Jesus is passing. And what happens when this goes on, he can't help himself but cry out. Because he's fueled by this thing called hope. Maybe this man can help me. Maybe this man can actually do something for me. Should I say something? Should I not? I don't know. But I need to find out. Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, son of David, help me. I want you to do me a favor for a second. Probably should have done this a little bit earlier, but oh well. Do me a favor and close your eyes. And don't picture anything. Just the black. Imagine if that, of what you see right now, nothing. And even like the memories that you have of your family, your close friends, the pew that you're sitting in, the car that you drive, your house, the grass. Just imagine if none of those images ever existed. And just this was your reality. Darkness. Nothing. Would you be willing to cry out? Son of David, have mercy on me. Son of David, help me. You can open your eyes. Bartimaeus finds himself in this moment desperate. He finds himself absolutely desperate and willing and ready to cry out and say, Son of David, work in my life. Son of David, do something for me. Son of David, fix this. And what happens is they have this engagement, they have this little back and forth where Jesus then calls him and the man walks up to him, right? And he just like pulls him close to him. And then Jesus asks a very, very pointed question. He looks at him and he says, what do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? I got a feeling Bartimaeus is probably hungry. He probably needs something to eat. Because I'd be willing to bet that if you're a blind beggar out every day begging, there were probably some days you didn't go with food. He probably could have used something to drink. He probably could have used a lot of different things, right? He probably could have used some money. Like maybe like set me up in a house. Set me up with some kind of property, set me up with some kind of an inheritance, set me up with something that's going to like take care of the comforts that I have and the creature needs that I have, right? Like my basics, food, shelter, clothing, right? Those kind of things. He probably had a long list of what he could try and rattle off to Jesus, right? But what does he do? He looks at Jesus and he's in touch with the one place in his heart that he's most vulnerable. He recognizes the one place that he is absolutely most vulnerable and absolutely most in need of Jesus working. And he says, I want to see. Every single person in this church, every single person in all of our families, every single person that is a priest, every single person that comes in and out of this church, that's in this diocese, that's in this world, every single one of us have something that is the biggest, deepest need of our life. Because we're weak. We are not perfect. And if everything depends on me, sooner or later it's going to fall. But every one of us has something that we need to ask for. And what a tragedy it is whenever we close in on ourselves and just try and muscle through. God never has established it that way. God never has looked at us and said, no, thank you, no. In fact, in the scripture today, God has every reason, Jesus has every reason to look at Bartimaeus and just ignore him, right? Just to keep walking past him. He's just a beggar on the street. He's insignificant. I don't really know him. It doesn't really matter, right? He's just going to go back to being sitting right there, whatever, right? Like, he's not even a Jew. Like, he has every reason just to keep walking past him and just to ignore the man that's calling out to him. And Jesus doesn't do it, and he still meets him. And as long as Bartimaeus is willing to ask, Jesus is willing to provide. So my question to us tonight, as we go into Mass, is are we willing, am I willing to ask God to meet us where we need him? Thing is that Bartimaeus doesn't waste he doesn't waste the ask. He doesn't waste his requests. He looks at Jesus and he tells him exactly what he needs in the exact place that he needs it and how. And it's his faith that saves him. Do we have a faith as strong as the blind Gentile beggar named Bartimaeus? As we come to Mass tonight, places that we're weakest is where God wants to work. Can we allow him in? Can we bring the deepest request of our heart, the deepest places of hurt, the biggest places of struggle? Can we bring those things to the altar and actually trust the Lord that he will answer it in the way that he wants, in the time that he wants? Is our faith strong enough? Today as we come to Mass, the same God who met Bartimaeus on a road leading into a city 2,000 years ago is the same God who wants to meet us as well. May we meet him in our vulnerability, in our weakness, and allow him to do his work.